which is very similar to Moodle. I'm not sure about the interface. I haven't seen the interface of okay. So you can see the variety of, because actually I'm program leader for these courses. I actually run lots of modules and I oversee some of the other modules which are run by other academics to make sure of the accuracy and everything. I picked one of these modules. Can you see it clearly? So I picked C++ for a cursor, which is I'm at 12. I pick previous year, which obviously is completed. That's actually when I was on maternity leave. That's probably very funny. And this one, I think that is. Right, if you look at the content of the module, some of you asked a question for me how you design the module template on Blackboard. This is actually the norm, and for the programs I manage, I make sure we have consistency. If I'm speaking fast, please stop me and I can go slower. For consistency, I make sure all the modules running in my course, in my program, for instance, BSc Computer Games Programming, they all have similar look. For students not to get confused. So they don't see a different user interface. The user interface would be the same for students, and they don't get confused, and they go straight to the point they are looking for. They don't have to learn the interface. I teach them the interface in the induction week, which is next week. So when they come to enroll, I show them one example module, I go through that, and that's it for the rest of the 3 years. So everything will be similar with different contents, obviously, and different levels. So as you can see, I put the academic calendar. Obviously, this is for previous year. So they get the term calendar, the holidays, the breaks, and everything. This section is announcement, obviously, which I missed. Any announcement during the term I have, I keep putting announcement, and an automatic email will be sent to them. If a lecture is rescheduled, if a lecture is cancelled, if an academic, one of my lab tutors is off sick, I send an announcement of the basic students' time, or if there is an announcement about their assessment, about the deadline, I make an announcement and automatically email to them. And obviously introduction to the module in the beginning, etc. So that's it about the announcement. So I have module template, which is obviously what you have seen. This is the old template, it's slightly modified because we have a new template which obviously Chris gave you. This is 2016 and 17. If I go to the one of the templates I have, okay, this was obviously one of the templates. That's a 30 credit module. The module leader, Faculty of Technology, C++ programming, module description, learning outcomes, develop, write, design, communicate for level 4, okay, which is obviously what you have been experimenting. Develop smaller scale console programming, programming C++ using features of the C++ language. Communicate design of classes and document. This is obviously the second term and then the object-oriented programming. Assessment, it's 50-50, 50% through lab work, portfolio, and 50% individual submission, which I will show you in a minute. And reassessment by a piece of programming resubmitted. Okay? So that is given to students from day one. However, they have more detail on the module content. When I go to module content, I divide it into lectures, labs, tutorials, and extra tutorials, etc. Okay? My lectures, okay, if you look at that, a brief summary of each lecture in the beginning with the content developed to the end of week 28. Okay? I mean, if I start, for instance, for week 2, which is a bit more understandable, variables and operators in C++, by the end of this session, you will get to learn the following. Variable data types, and the learning outcome, basically the summary learning outcome of the week is proposed to them. And for your information, in the first day of the term, 1st of October, the whole module pack is ready for students from week 1 to 24, including all the lecture notes, all the lab notes, assessment, and everything is available to them. If I have advanced students who want to move on quickly to week 10, they're more than welcome to do that. However, I follow lecture by lecture, but they can read in advance and so on. Yes, the whole content. The whole content, yes. Because I've been doing this module, I have to be fair with you. I have been doing this module for such a long time. I'm very confident with the content. And if you are a programmer, you know that C++ is C++. There are different new libraries which are introduced every now and then, but C++ is C++. Assessment is changing, but the content of the basics, logic of the programming stays the same. Every now and then I change it, okay? I will update and attach to every week, okay? So this doesn't have you here. That's a 2017. I'll show you the one with video. And videos are not upfront. The videos I record on the day and on the evening of that day. Oh, Chris is in. Sorry. So I was showing them an example of you. Thank you, Chris. Everybody likes you. So let's have a look at that, and then you go to the module, which obviously this is the lab, I think this is the lab activity, as you can see, and what they have to obviously create, and they then start with the Turnitin. The Turnitin is the important thing I wanted to show you, which obviously now you've got college waiting. Under assignment, okay, this is the module content, and labs, every week's lab content, and lectures, if I go to, for example, this is the lecture, so the PDF and obviously, okay, all the content is there as a PDF, as well as obviously the video. Okay, so that's and obviously staff information, all the people, all the lab assistants in the lab, myself, my office hours, enough content tutorial, some video tutorials, which is recorded by myself in advance. For example, SFMA is a library for graphics in C++. It's a little bit complicated. I've created an SFMA video attached to tutorial, extra tutorial for them to learn when they start OOP. And then if I go to assignment, this is the interesting part which I wanted to show you. But it's actually, this is changed now. This is previous years which we had more. They have a lab portfolio and they have a coursework too, as I said, 50-50. The lab portfolio, there were 3 submissions, and the submission is through Turnitin, which I want to show you. So they complete lab experiments on lab 3, lab 5, lab 9, and lab 16, and submit it on Turnitin. And then obviously a final coursework specification, which they create a game. A Frogger game if you're familiar with, and the assessment is through that. And obviously, this is what we actually were talking about, the assessment criteria, how we design it. And obviously, you can modify that based on the need of your project. Yes, in the taxonomies we showed you there are some generic criteria, but we like you to be able to kind of personalize it based on your module and etc. Okay. So, to get access to obviously submission, the submissions are through here. I mean, obviously, module feedback, that's something we always provide. There is something which obviously our head of quality requires us all to do. Module level feedback at 2 parts of the module, first term and the second term, where we provide questions for a student and actually access through Blackboard, and we can actually download the spreadsheet and look at the feedback from students, which obviously constructive feedback for us to be passed on to lab tutors, etc. And obviously for the next development. And obviously here they will see the grade. I'm not a student, I can't see my grade. But I wanted to show you, I mean, I know Chris is busy, I have to pass on to Chris. and Neil, but I will go to Turnitin to show you some of the examples of the Turnitin, for example. Okay, so lab with one. Okay, this is what you see. Students submit their coursework here. I mean, some of them are, this is the very first coursework and they normally get very good mark on it. I mean, I pick one of them, so they submit through Turnitin. I don't check the similarity, it's a coding, and they submit their CPP file, their file which can be executed in compiler. But obviously they receive a feedback. I'm going to show you one of the students, and if I have that with a bit of a feedback, obviously this is the submission. Here's the feedback, written feedback. Can you see that? So that's the written feedback which is provided by the individual lab tutor to them. The criteria is very easy, as you can see, because it's a coding module. We have 4 specific, like does it compile? Has it been commented effectively? Does it meet the requirements? Does it use appropriate implementation approach, which is technical? That's very crisp and clear, because they're actually computer science students. They want mark exactly 20 out of 50. So they want a specific mark, but the detail of obviously more constructive feedback is actually given to individual students. The good thing about Turnitin is the timeliness of that. So we can provide it in the lab while you are supporting your students. The students submit on Turnitin, the final submission and the deadline. While you are helping the students, you can actually give them instant feedback. And we're also trying to provide some feedback, which is actually not official feedback, give them some peer assessment and ask them to actually mark each other and give each other some informal feedback to help them, again through Turnitin. But obviously we make it read-only in certain aspects to make sure students can only provide feedback, save it, and not be able to edit it by anybody else. And we select randomly. We give each student five coursework to peer feedback, and they peer feedback their friends and give them feedback without knowing the name of the friends. Okay? So that was an example I wanted to show you. But I will show you more examples from my other modules, but this was, some of you asked me about large programming modules. How do you manage assessment? This is how we manage improvement. Right, okay, I'm going to leave it to colleagues. Neil Brown from School of Engineering, thank you Neil, who has got his own innovative approach for marking scientific and quantitative modules, such as engineering modules.
Hello everybody, I'll just take a few moments to get set up and then we can begin. We'll probably be talking for about 20 minutes.
Ну вот 4 часа. Это аудиогиды. Они без интернета работают, то есть и тут разные. А вы запишите ресурсы, этот он классный. Это вот этот Easy Travel. Там прям диапазон, и там очень много вот. Тут аудиогиды, ну, по темам. То есть вы можете просто их использовать как офлайн насколько. А фиг знает. Давайте я гляну. Сейчас. Сейчас я скажу. 57 мегабайт.
Сейчас докачаю.
It's nice to see so many of you here today. I'm going to tell you about e-assessment in quantitative subjects, but we are starting to blur this a bit and move towards qualitative subjects as well. The nice thing about quantitative subjects is we can do automatic marking for numerical answers for questions, and we're moving over to things like photographic comprehension and so forth. Within the context of building energy surveying, I'll give you a bit of a background to the module, how we overhauled it, and how we brought in e-assessment for a major component. I'll move this up to full screen so you can all see it. Yep, there we go. So, energy analysis techniques are I won't stand in front of the screen because then you won't be able to read it. Energy analysis techniques was around about 300 pages of written material at master's level, which was delivered to attending and distance learning students. And essentially it's energy efficiency and building surveying and the mathematics behind that. So the students would have to analyse energy data and go around the buildings. If this was at a different time of year, you might see my students all outside in the corridor with their infrared camera looking at the building performance. So how to bring the subject to life? We were thinking about issues such as neurodiversity, and pedagogically, it's not a very good idea to give distance learning students, for example, 300 pages of text. So we broke everything apart graphically, and we used systems thinking as a way to restructure the module, indeed to give it some structure. And essentially we're breaking apart the initial background where they get thermodynamics revision if they've done it already, and it's new to them sometimes. We have students from engineering backgrounds, but as diverse as psychology, geography, history, all kinds of students want to get into the master's courses. This is a core module of energy and sustainable building design and energy and sustainable development, which used to be called climate change and sustainable development. So moving down, we see the structure of the whole thing. And this is borrowed from the idea of a structure chart, which we use in software engineering. And we do things much like data flow diagrams in there as well. All of this is a great way to visualize when you're processing data in software. But it's also a good way of looking at processing data in buildings too. Now, in software, of course, flowcharts are seen as quite an old thing. In building design, building surveying, they're quite a new thing. This isn't often done. And what we've done here is we've distilled 60 pages of text and graphics into this one flowchart, which the students are using in professional practice. We've published on this as well. And it's not been done before, so we're quite happy about that. We've presented this at conferences and things. And every year, the students use this on real buildings, sometimes university buildings, sometimes their own buildings, their own employers. On average, they can save between 20 and 30% of energy with no financial outlay. So they're very happy about that. That comes down to the idea of employability. Because we have distance learning students, we drive Blackboard quite hard. So many lectures have the videos after the lecture. All of our videos go up beforehand. So it shows them how, for example, to analyze various energy data and things like that. These will come through as podcasts. It's almost in the style of the way the Open University used to do this in the UK, when they would have TV programs with lectures on. We put these up before they actually study. The next thing that we've done when overhauling the module, and then I'll get on to assessment right away after that, is to do with getting out of the classroom, which is quite a new idea for some subjects. But for building surveying, we couldn't avoid it. The students have to be around buildings and looking at things. So what we decided to do was to get the students to pretend they were commercial energy managers and consultants writing energy reports for actual clients. So they go through the buildings and they take notes and they survey things. Safety-wise, it's okay. Everybody's very keen on safety in the UK, and if we have students crossing busy roads with traffic and things, we have to let them know, don't step out into the road while you're photographing a building and things like that. So there are caveats about practical work which we manage. Students who are less able, students who can't walk, for example, get given videos and clips of building energy surveys so they can work with that. And they start to compile all of this into their practical project reports. So when they have these practical project reports, they are in effect energy managers and consultants, but they're not being paid for doing it yet. So they can make mistakes that they won't be able to make once they're in industry. Now, the module is marked with 2 assignments. A written assignment, which is a small assignment, 30% of the mark, and a main component, which is 70% of the mark. I decided to see if we could automate the marking of the first assignment. We want to have less evaluation of students where appropriate, but also we want to reduce the marking load. And you'll see why in a moment why I wanted to concentrate the marking effort on the second assignment. So we looked at online testing, and I'll show you how this is done in Blackboard in a short while. What we have is a pool of about 300 to 400 questions. And every student, every year, is given a selection, a subset of those questions to answer. And as you can see here, they have numerical answers. So in this case, it's the heat loss from an uninsulated pipe. And then the next question suggests some insulation and gives the performance characteristics of that. And then they calculate how much the heat loss is. So it's formative as well as they're working through the tests. They can take the tests at any time during the module. What we ask is they don't sit next to each other, and we scan the IP addresses. So if 2 students, for example, are in the library taking the test at the right time, we say, no, sorry, you can't do this, you have to go away and start again. It's very difficult indeed, almost impossible, we think, for students to get answers from elsewhere, although these are open book tests. They're between exams and coursework. We've got many, many more checks in place for things like plagiarism with the online tests than we might have with coursework. I'll explain why in a moment. Multiple choice questions as well, and photo comprehension. And while they're open book tests, there isn't enough time in the tests to read all of the subject material while taking it. So the subject material is there as a memory reference more than anything else. In this case, they're being asked to look at a regression plot, so we've got the predicted versus the actual building energy demand, and they're asked to say which one of these shows air conditioning and heating running simultaneously. Something we have a lot of in the UK is everybody wants air conditioning, but it's not a hot country. So it's only internal building gains and things that drive air conditioning. The heating comes on because it thinks it's cold, the building gets too warm, the air conditioning comes on. So the students are getting a practical grounding in what really happens out there when they finish. And that's all part of the automated tests. We've semi-automated the marking for the main assignment, which is the written assignment on what they found wrong in buildings. And we use speech recognition for that. And doing it this way, as well as marking on a grid. So we've got all of the different aspects of the report which go into here. They're given marks out of 10, which are weighted accordingly. So energy saving recommendations has quite a high weighting. Text presentation isn't so important because of course English might not be the first language of the students and things like that. And they get a maximum of 1,400 points, that's scaled back to a percentage. It's very easy and quick to do, and the second marker, when they use the same system, we get alarmingly similar results. So we think we've got it right. And this is the kind of feedback they get. And students have said to me that they're blown away by the amount of feedback. It's very easy to prepare with speech recognition, something I thoroughly recommend. It lets you concentrate on reading the assignments rather than having to type notes into PDFs and things like that. So when we think about automated assessment, and I'll show you the examples of it in a moment, we've got various reasons in the UK for wanting to move away from exams because they're quite unpopular with students, and we have methods of surveying students which are government-led, which are trying to move the universities away from exams. But also, pedagogically, we're not too keen on exams because they can be a memory test. So we need other methods of assessing students. Industrial bodies who accredit courses, like the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, who we work with, the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, they want more practical work and they want more group work too. The problem with coursework is essay builds. Now, of course, we've all heard of these, but another issue with coursework is automatically generated essays. We can spot these currently. They're failing the Turing test. We can recognise artificial intelligence for what it is. Although, arguably, some Facebook users at election time might be duped, but when we're marking assignments, we can still see it. Online testing offers us a way between this because we can make it secure, we can make it user-friendly, and the other nice thing we can do is as a student works through a course, they work through a chapter, they can take a test. They can take that test in the classroom as well, so we don't have to have separate exam room. They work through another chapter and they take a test. We used to have a well-known book in this country, which I imagine there are equivalents elsewhere, that was the most structured book there had been, which was called Engineering Mathematics by Ken Stroud. And at the end of every single chapter was a quick test. And it was actually fun to do. And Ken Stroud had managed to make engineering mathematics into an enjoyable subject. It was like solving puzzles. And that's how we're making the online tests. The students are still worried about it because they think it's an exam. But once they've taken the first of these tests, they start to enjoy it, as well as we get a good, precise and accurate idea of their capabilities. And the main thing for our modules is that it's suitable for distance learning. Now, just to underline this, this is a fresh case that came up a couple of weeks ago. We catch naughty students, and that's something that we're very, very keen on. We don't just rely on Turnitin, we check everything through student writing styles and things like that as well. And this is an actual example of some auto-generated text that turned up in an assignment. So as you can see there, other words have been inserted into an internet reference. So we get to hear about an aggressive heating system. Now, an aggressive heating system isn't something we really see outside dystopian science fiction films. We have some bad heating systems in the UK, probably most of them, but we certainly don't have aggressive ones. So this sounded alarm bells. And what I thought I'd do, and I'll show you this, is as a thought experiment, I thought I'd take energy analysis techniques and see what automatic essay software could do with that phrase. And I got into this thing called EssayFX, which I understand is increasingly popular. And what it does is it takes a reference from the internet, and a pattern emerges here. When you see essays like this, you'll see a big list of references at the end of the report. None of them might actually be the key references that you've recommended in your lectures. They'll be from all kinds of places. So I see web references about nuclear fission and things like that, and that's not part of building energy efficiency, but somehow they find their way in to justify using regression analysis, for example. Strange references. And what the software does is it selects the words that it thinks you might like to change if you want to tell Turnitin that this is original work. And Turnitin might wind up with a result of, say, 1% correlation. So somebody might say, oh, that looks original. But of course, when we read this, it doesn't make sense. And the software then asks you to move sentences around so that it's no longer the original reference. Therefore, it appears to be original. But of course, we all know this is copy work. The concern is once artificial intelligence gets good enough, it might be able to assemble essays. That, I think, is where new forms of testing come in, because then we can really check if the student is, as we say, on the level, if they're good enough to get the qualification. So this is the result. The style of writing is almost identical to the auto-generated essays that we have. So we must beware of auto-essay generation. What I'm going to do now is show the way that we use this as a double check. So this is Blackboard, which I understand is seen as part of the seminars. We use Blackboard quite heavily. Personally, I also like Moodle, and I would like in 10 years' time everybody goes to Moodle because it's so good. But Blackboard is really good as well. There's nothing quite like these systems that are really revolutionary. So, okay, I need to go back to another module. The link's not there. We'll find it. Okay, so what it's doing here is it's selecting from a much larger pool of questions. Some of the questions that we asked them this year, bearing in mind as well, every student gets a random selection of questions from question groups. So a question group of multiple choice, and a question group where they have to do some maths, and a question group where they have to look at photographs of buildings and say what's wrong, for example. The same questions may come up in about 30 years' time, with the module running twice a year for distance learning and attending students. In 30 years' time, we will have new questions. So if we were to look at, for example, some randomly served questions, and this has got a 45-minute time limit, which iteratively we found out is the shortest time that we can do this in and still make the course accessible, e.g. to people with dyslexia. Yet at the same time, it doesn't allow somebody enough time to ring their brother who is a building surveyor and ask them how to do something. So we start with some very easy questions to get them confident with the online test. So really, really simple things like, does an LED lamp use less energy than a fluorescent lamp? And then further into the questions they'll be asked, is a high pressure sodium lamp better than a metal halide lamp? And is an LED lamp better than a low pressure sodium lamp? Things like that. So we'll save an answer that we don't know. It says question is unanswered when students don't know. So okay. That's the next question. Save answer. Okay. So then they start to get into more complicated questions. So here's a question about regression analysis. So although the structure of it looks straightforward and just 4 multiple choice questions, they need to know exactly what the building energy phenomena are that will give the right answer. In this case, it's stratification. Outside there is a good example of stratification. If we get to the top of the atrium, then we often send our students up there to measure the temperature at the top and the temperature at the bottom. And then we show them the regression block, and that fixes in their mind you're actually in a building with stratification. So we'll come out from there. I'll go back to I'll go to the second part of the test, photo comprehension. So it's asking us questions about energy use, and we have to select the correct plot that represents predicted energy use against actual energy use for the building. So if the student has studied all of the material, they know the answer right away. If they haven't studied the material and they're trying to look it up, then they maybe answer about 3 or 4 questions in the time available. So they have to have a good knowledge of it. So we'll just okay, various items of machinery. So what we have, let's click on that. Save answer. And we'll go to the next question. And it's another regression question. They may also be shown pictures of things like buildings and heating plant. And with Blackboard, with photo questions, they click on an area of interest and that becomes the right answer. So for example, they may have a building plant room with motors and pumps and variable speed drives. And they'll be asked to click on a particular piece of equipment in the building plant room to show that they're recognised, because that's the thing they need to do when they're building surveying. So I'll just see if we have any practical pictures. They all come up at random, so I don't know if we'll get one straight away. So, exotic heating floors, mixed use, condensing boiler, portable electric heaters. That's that one there. So you can click anywhere in the area of interest, and that becomes your answer. So the answer to that. Next question. Yes, we have a photo comprehension. This is a very quick and easy one, but it's surprising how many students don't always get the simple answers correct. So, and that also builds their confidence as well. As the test goes on, we mix some easy questions in with the harder ones as well, but they generally appear towards the beginning. So we'll come out from there, and then I'll show you the really interesting questions, the tough questions. So you see we asked them lots and lots of questions at different stages of the module too. So they know how well they're doing, if they need to improve, if they need to work harder, or if they haven't read any of the module content. And we have deadlines for those. They can take them any time up until a certain date. Go back into online tests. Okay, so what we have here, we do have some issues with decimal points and decimal commas because our students are from all over the world. And of course in the UK we use the decimal point. There are some parts of Europe where people use a decimal apostrophe, for example. So we give a range of answers, and if they've calculated the right answer, they can click on that. It is possible with Blackboard to have a numerical answer and even to have a percentage tolerance on that. Because, for example, if some people are using phones as calculators, some people are using proper calculators, if they do a natural logarithm or something like that, they're likely to get two slightly different answers from one calculator to another. And in something like thermodynamics, a couple of decimal places of wrongness can produce quite a different answer. So for automated marking, a percentage tolerance is allowable on the answer they produce. If I remember rightly, that's 3 years. So we'll select that, save the answer, and go to the next one. So, as we see, we have calculated answers, and in this case, they get to type in the answer into the box, and then it grades them automatically. We then check everything by hand, just to be sure that the software has worked properly. And this has reduced the marking load. It used to take a week to mark all of these assignments. Now it takes about 30 minutes. And that's time that I can then spend with my students going around buildings, examining buildings and things like that, because that always takes much longer than a normal lecture. So that's the end of the presentation. Hopefully we finished with a little bit more time for lunch. And I'm now going to, I'd like to join you all for lunch, but I have to go and mark dissertations on building energy efficiency. So I'll be off doing that. So I'll be thinking of all of you. Do you have any questions? Has anyone here tried automated marking?
Any questions?
Nearly everybody's still doing it by hand.
Они показательные для примера. Что за бред? Что за бред? Временно за то, что они хорошо выполняют обязанности. Нет, вот как они должны
I tell the
работать.
students to use a
Если
laptop
хорошо, значит
or a desktop PC. And at the
каждому
beginning of every
каждому
yes,
тут
laptop of every type. And this is an increasing thing. We've got 300 pages of lecture, and we see some students trying to read it on smartphones. And sometimes we get emails from students asking for help, and we can tell that they're texting a question on the smartphone. Because there's never enough detail that if somebody is typing to help them. Yes, it becomes it's something we really need to be careful of as more students are using smartphones. And they might spend €500 on a phone. Really nice phone, it's just not big enough. And we've seen this with the online tests now as well. We always say use a wired or Wi-Fi laptop or PC. And on laptop, never use 3G because it's related to and the other thing is as well, the mouse X, Y, this is done differently on smartphones. I think X and Y on a PC is done from the top left when we're on websites and things. With smartphones, they use a different system. And students often think one of the answers that comes out.
современно представление отчетов, то есть это вместе.
Yes, I say you shouldn't be using a smartphone. We provide computers for all the students. We can lend them laptops. At the beginning of the masters course, they have to confirm that they've got access to a computer. They do like to use their phones. Yeah, that can be a problem. Any more questions? Well, thanks very much. You're welcome. Well, thanks very much, everybody. No doubt the course organisers will be letting you know what happens next.